admitted most of the people that were in the waiting room. So I think I'll get started. Welcome to you all. My name is Meg Weston. I'm the co-founder and director of the Poets Corner, which the Poets Corner is a platform that was created to create community among writers and readers of poetry and short prose. We started it in June of 2020 when we were all sheltered in, and those of us who are writers were feeling a little bit isolated, a little bit alone, and we said, well, what can we do to bring together people who feel like we do, who love the written and the spoken word? And we've started hosting ever since then, once a month, a reading of poets or other writers of short prose. And we do this once a month. And all of the past recordings are on the website, thepoetscorner.org. We've had some wonderful, wonderful readings, including the one I'm really looking forward to today, of our new voices rising, our young poets who have joined us today. So for all of those you who are young or young at heart, this is a reading for you. I just want to say a few words about upcoming events, and then I will introduce our hosts for this afternoon's event. So in November, on November 13th, we'll have a reading called Ekphrastic Pairings, Paintings, Photography, and Poetry. And that is in collaboration with the Paige Gallery in Camden, Maine. And Paige Gallery will have an exhibition called Ekphrastic Pairings up in their gallery beginning, well, we're going to open for submissions October 17th. And you can either look at the artwork online, or you can go visit the gallery in person. And we welcome anybody to submit poetry in response to any of the artwork. And you can submit them between October 18th and November 1st. And then between November 1st and the 9th, we'll be reading through all of those and select 10 to read on the Poets Corner on Sunday, November 13th. And then another 10 will be selected to read in the gallery or to have their poems read in the gallery if they're not able to be present in person. The following Saturday, I believe that's the 19th. And so the poems that are selected on the Poets Corner will be selected by the Poets Corner. The poems that are selected to be read in the gallery will be selected by the artists themselves. So each artist will select a poem that was written in response to their artwork. So it's really fun for the artists and fun for the poets. So I encourage everybody and anybody to submit their poetry for us for that. And then in December, on December 4th, we'll have Reading Rilke, a celebration on Rilke's birthday. And that will be led by Mark Burrows, who's a renowned award-winning Rilke translator and a poet himself, along with Stephanie Dowrick, who's a writer in Australia, and her who has written books about Rilke, as well as other books, and Padraig Otwama, who is the host of the On Being Poetry podcast that's part of Krista Tippett's On Being. And who is a poet, and they are just delightful to listen to. They did a program for us last year, and they're going to do it again this year. And you won't want to miss that. So on to today's program. I'm really very excited to have these young poets with us today and to have two young at heart hosts for this event. One is John Paul Caponegro, who is a good friend who you might know really from his work as a photographer. He's internationally collected visual artist and a published author. He also leads adventures, and I've been on several of his workshops, which really are so much more than a photography workshop. They're really about creativity in some of the wildest places on the earth. And he helps participants creatively make deeper connections with nature and with themselves. Caponegro combines his background in painting with traditional and alternative photographic processes using state-of-the-art digital technology. You can view his TEDx and Google Talks, as well as lots of other information on johnpaulcaponegro.com. And John Paul is a poet as well. And I've really had the pleasure of writing poetry with him and reading his poetry. So that's such a pleasure. And he will be joined by Kathleen Ellis. And this is not Kathleen's first time on Poets Corner. I do have to say that John Paul is also one of the board of advisors for the Poets Corner. But Kathleen grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and her most recent poetry collections are Out of Body Travel and Narrow River to the North. And the very exciting news is that her manuscript Body of Evidence won the 2022 Grayson Books Poetry Contest, and that will be published in early 2023. Congratulations, Kathleen. Her poems have appeared in numerous publications, including the Cafe Review and various anthologies. And she's a recipient of fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts and the Maine Arts Commission, and the Pablo Neruda Poetry Prize from Nimrod magazine. And perhaps most importantly today, she teaches poetry and creative writing at the University of Maine at Orono and coordinates the annual Poets Speak event in Bangor. So I want to welcome John Paul and Kathleen and let you take it away for today's event. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Meg. I'm going to make a couple of quick remarks about how this happened and pass it quickly over to Kathleen and our young poets, because I know we want to hear as much as we can from them. I think we'd ask, how did this event get started? And it happened when Meg and I were sitting down together and saying, what would be great future events? And one of the first things that came to my mind was youth poetry. And I was flashing back to a very influential moment for me. I was down at Al Gore's Climate Leadership Corps training in Atlanta. The youth climate strike was going on at that time, and Al Gore had just had this online live chat with some of the people in Europe, some of the young activists in Europe. And then he segued into showing us how to do his Truth in 10 talk, one of the things we were being trained to do. And it was fascinating to see this new change. He had a little burr in his voice. He's been going around with the Reverend Barber, so he was preaching a little bit more, and his delivery was a little less wooden. It was very interesting to see how the power of the voice carried through. And then after this quick flood of 10 minutes of data, we were all kind of reeling from that. They played this little video of this backlit young woman reciting her poem about the natural world, and it just touched me. I was looking at the way that my heart kind of opened up and swelled. I really appreciated the effectiveness of Gore's delivery and how he was helping so many people that way. But the deep emotional touching that happened through this young poet's work really shifted. And I think, no, I'm not the kind of regular grassroots activist. I write plenty of letters, the rest of it, but I want my art to be the way that I contribute to this dialogue, and that was a real affirmation for me. So I was speaking with a young filmmaker that I had met there and have stayed in contact with since. I said, Gerard, do you remember that young girl who was reading her poets? Yeah, JP. You know who that was? I said, no, I don't. That was Amanda Gorman. Okay, so we are living in a time where the National Youth Poet Laureate later became the presidential inaugural poet, and we're seeing people like Greta Thunberg shift the dialogue on a global scale, and it's very interesting to see how important the contributions of youth are. And I could say a little bit more about that later, but I think that's all I'm going to say here. I had the pleasure of reading with Kathleen both at the Farnsworth for an Earth Day event and here for the York Eco Poetry event. And the first thing I thought is, Kathleen knows the young poets in Maine better than most or almost anyone. Let her run with this. And I think she's found some really wonderful young talent. I can't wait to hear what they have to say. So Kathleen, thank you for pulling this great community together and for this wonderful hour we're going to experience.
Thank you, John Paul. And thanks, Meg, for, I'm not sure how many years you've been doing this, but for all the years that you've been doing this, such a wonderful addition to what's available to us in Maine, to hear voices. And yes, we've had a couple of readings together, and it's really fun again. I lost him, he's gone, but it was great fun being with you on those two readings, and we'll see what happens today. We should have some more fun. Okay, now this is a very strange thing, but Iris, Paige, I think, not Rachel, but Sam, and Molly, who's not here. Molly Gluck was one of the people who helped me put this together, actually, along with Iris. But all those people, I've never seen their faces fully before. We've all been masked. Yeah, except for Rachel, because Rachel works with me in a different way on Zoom. I'm her honors thesis advisor. She is putting together a book of poems. So that's pretty exciting to see these people. Actually, Iris, I saw here. When was that? Last spring? It was around that time. So it's nice to see all of you. And Iris, we're going to go in alphabetical order. And Iris is first. Iris Elise is a third-year English major at the University of Maine, where she's president of the Creative Writing Club, and she's been featured twice in our undergraduate library literary magazine, The Open Field. I have a copy of the latest one. You can see that they're very small. They changed the format on this about, I don't know, 4 years ago, perhaps, maybe even longer. So it can fit into your pocket. It's really like a chapbook now. The only problem is you wouldn't want to try and read out of a reading because the letters are so small, but it's a wonderful size. I love it. In 2019, she studied under poet Richie Hoffman during a Kenyon College summer residency program. And she's recently been a recipient of a Grenfell Poetry Prize and won the Steve Grady Creative Writing Competition and the Albert Morton Turner Essay Contest. These are all awards from the English department. When she isn't at university, she works at Foreverland Farm Animal Sanctuary in Amelia, Ohio, where she has been an animal care coordinator for 3 years. Iris.
Hi, thank you, Kathleen. So I guess I'm just going to get into it. This first poem, this semester, I've been trying to go to the Orono Bog Walk every weekend. I'm not sure if many people are familiar with it. I feel like everyone in Orono goes there, but I don't know how big it is outside of Orono. And so this is a poem I wrote like a week ago while sitting on the boardwalk. There is a metaphor somewhere in this infertile soil with its red peat moss, cranberries, and squirrels. If I were a storybook character, I think I would live in a solitude like this, of aging things and ungrowing trees, Watch the rise and fall of orchids, the filling of the pitcher plants, the steady growth of strands of bog rosemary. I'd have shoes made of cotton grass, so light my feet would land softer than a vole's, wide as clouds. I've never been anything that mattered to the mycelium, but I take comfort in the call of crows and the soft tapping of a squirrel's nut on the edge of the boardwalk. Of the crow, of the squirrel, of the boardwalk, of somewhere else, of it all, of this place now. And so the second one, I also like to say I'm not a big fan of titles, and it's because they're hard. But this one is sort of loosely written in relation to Lifanu's Carmilla, specifically the edition edited by Carmen Maria Machado, because the scholarship in the introduction is like very, very important for the overall reading of the book, in my opinion. And this might not, it's a little too much to like explain sort of the background, so I'm really hoping the poetry does enough. That could not be true, but we'll find out. How we rest, Laura and I, the lying and the lying, the lyric of the liar, Laura, light in letters, threefold, fourfold coffins, the fiction, the letters, the lie in the lying place, to be young and to possess the cruelties of infatuation and to sleep until noon. Somewhere in the forest, dark and cliffside, funeral march, I hear you singing as a hateful burn of sunlight turned and glances glaring finger dances over spines and intrusion of the library quiet. So, did you hate me then or ever? And how we rest in your letters dripping, I do not know what makes a monster monstrous. You, me, dogs, peddlers, the fires and the pyres, staked and angry, gases of decomposition make staked corpses cry and ignite torches to breathe dragon fire. I am sad and angry as God and the spectral presence of an editorial note, resident ghost. This next one, I feel like I don't write well sitting in my room. So this next one I wrote when I was supposed to be working at the animal sanctuary. I discovered the sky in Colorado, creeping into the night from behind a tent flap. Years of nights and I had never seen the sky. I am always learning. Tonight I am in Ohio, the river valley, edge of the city limits. One edge of the sky glows like a bulb, freshly darkened. It is somewhere just before earliest morning and the air is cool, scented with damp earth. The fireflies have retired. I think the world has never been so quiet before, nor so cold, and the crickets have never harmonized this way with the tree frogs. I am always learning new hues of night. This next one is for my mom, which is really awkward since I think she showed up. But for many people I have known, I am wordful of clash and clamor. For only you, there is just coffee in the mountains, whistle of the kettle, the first birdsong of the morning. I wish you had ever been cruel, so each moment would not seem a subtraction. This next one is quite literally a journal entry. So the title can sort of informally be August 14th, 6:20 p.m. I am in love with very many things, including the color green. I am in love with Tove Jansson and white wine and times of the day that I can drink coffee, which I think might be all times of the day. I am in love with eating brownies out of the pan and old friends and Shakespeare and good interior lighting design. My reading log is very empty, but my brain is very filled with all sorts of things, from history podcasts and documentaries and theater to good movies. I've begun to write on a legal pad because it is open. I leave it around and write like I'm walking or breathing, no thought to it. My body confounds me, and yet I wear pajama shorts and tight tops and feel unclothed all over town. I let the dogs at work push me to the ground and lick my face, and I tell my favorite sheep that I love him today and forever, even with his silly face and improper manners. I ran a mile the other day and swept the whole hayloft, barrows and barrows of dusty grass. The whole time I had pieces of the Iliad stuck in my head. And then I've just got two more, but this one is written to one of our barn cats where I work. I have a favorite barn cat, which no one is allowed to tell the other barn cats, but it is true. And so this was a poem I wrote right before leaving work on my last day before starting the semester. Goodbye to the best of barn cats, his bedtime snack, then the feeling I haven't told him well enough, that I will miss how he sleeps beside my backpack and in cardboard boxes, that I am sorry my coworkers do not hand deliver dinner, that I have made a tarp for his cardboard box home because it is taken all summer, but it is finally as he likes it, that I am sorry I will not be there to repair the damages of October rainstorms. He sleeps, a soft gray shadow in cardboard dark, and he does not know to say goodbye. I bring him extra treats, ask him to look out for himself, to not miss me too much, and remind him I'll miss him more than I can say. I really love my cat, but this is the last one, and I really do not have an introduction for it. So thank you. When our hands and thighs are organized circuit-wise, our star stuff and fire stuff, firefly stuff, our lilac and lavender fog stuff, there are many reasons to believe in things thing-wise oriented toward us and starlight forks and ladle-wise, under tense, rain-patterned, my wardrobe organized your mind-wise, fireside-wise, same stuff making different things. Now I seek and loathe you always, I never understand a thing about what we owe each other. I can't stand to put words to it. Pattern-wise, I'm sick of every word. I stare at walls and contemplate McCandless lighting. Shadow of a door rises in a corner like a witch's hat or the beak of a paper crane. We used to warm hands over handmade candles in the forest dappled dark, so tell me I never knew you by placing fingertips on a still pond. I have known less every day since I met you, organized that wise, this way, same but emptier. Room for Ariadne's thread through the atom labyrinth of gold foil, somewhere in the dark, matches mine, or rods and cones silhouette you. Thank you.
Yes. Did I get it? I did. Thank you so much. I was just thinking that maybe I was wrong. Maybe some of you weren't wearing masks all the time, because there was a time when we were on Zoom. So maybe some of you took reading poems from me on Zoom. Not sure. You can tell me as we move along here. Paige McHatten is an English and creative writing student at the University of Maine. Her first chapbook, World Peace and Cowboys, great name, was published by Bottle Cap Press in March 2022. In her free time, she conversates, I love it, too loudly in public and likes to save bugs with tissues, along with other various activities. And she also wanted me to add that she is an editor for Open Field, give another plug to Open Field, and McGillicuddy Humanities Help MHC Fellow for the 2022-2023 school year. She can tell us the full name of that in a second. She'll be working on a creative project, a selection of short stories that revolve around the intricacies and nuances of female friendships and the pervasiveness of heteronormativity. Wow, she has to tell us what that means too. The majority of her poems that she's sharing today are inspired by some of her favorite writers, Toni Morrison, Kurt Vonnegut, Virginia Woolf, Sylvia Plath, and Emily Dickinson, to name a few. And she tells us she'd be happy to answer questions about them relating to her work. So, Paige.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to start by reading the first poem from my collection. It's called Hello Babies, and it's based off a quote from Vonnegut. So here goes. Hello babies. I have this disease late at night that involves marijuana and a mechanical pencil. When the lead breaks, I think about the kid that used to suck on his pencils in 3rd grade. He wore tulle skirts, shaved his head, and painted it Jupiter for childhood cancer. That was a beautiful thing, but I used to throw wood chips at him. Here's the things, babies. You've got to be kind even to sharks and war criminals. The clowns that give you their autograph are not always at the circus. Keep your head up, babies. You might find the missing rattle under the cradle. So that was the opening poem. I'm gonna move on to the second one, actually. And like I said, Toni Morrison's one of my favorite writers and people in general. So the title of this poem is a quote from hers. If you surrender to the air, you could ride it. When you were born, a winter's worth of sludge got kicked off the car tire. When you were born, you wept alongside your mother for the second time. When you were born, she wondered how you grew to be that size, not like a bad weed, but like how objects appear smaller in the rearview mirror. When you were born, you stood face to face with her and your noses touched. When you were born, you became more than a daughter and more than fruit enclosing potential energy. When you were born, you joined a prayer and found God and spilled milk. When you were born, the world collapsed in ultraviolet moonshine and no one thought it was light or dark. When you were born, your body was not a vacancy meant to fill a strip mall, but the meadow before the motor. All right, moving on to the next one. It's titled Blondie. This is probably my favorite from my chapbook. He asks me, is there any man you love more than your father? Translation, does that nose piercing mean you're a queer? I could have said yes, Bob Dylan, but that would have been the most queer thing I could have said. Sorry, because Bob could be reading this. He is still alive, you know. And sorry to George Harrison, who's pounding on his grave. That's besides the point, though. I could have said I had another dad from New York City who pays me in crypto for answering his Instagram messages with pictures of feet, and the best part is no one said they had to be mine. I could have said, nope, Gramps, the SSRI puts my sex drive in the negatives. Everything else is zeroed, not flatlining, but humming, but that would have ruined the ham dinner. I could have said my heart was glass and most men see themselves in it, but I think I shook my head instead. And this is going to be the second to last one that I read from my chapbook. It is called Oyster Knife. Comes from a quote from Zora Neale Hurston. She said, I do not weep at the world. I'm too busy sharpening my oyster knife. There's the shad bush marking the edge and the bees dance around it. The point of no return drips with honey and sticks until apocalypse. Sweetness doesn't come without a sting first. The women sit on shore and shuck oysters with laughter. They do not weep, but lick the salt that lines their lips. All right, and the last one from my collection, it's also the final poem in my collection. It's called Don't Smile at Me. When an old man tells you your flashlight's on in the pharmacy line and that those things are LED, baby, maybe you should ask him if he's really sure about that. And then walk up and get your citalopram because this mind is always erasing. And when you're in his car and he plays a song he says you've never heard before, maybe you should ask yourself if that's even true and if the band is really that cool. And no one's ever told you you could do that before, but when you're sitting in a room full of people who really love you, you'll know you wasted a lot of time with a smile on your face, nodding when you didn't really mean it. All right, and this has gone by too fast, I fear, but my last one is inspired by, so I stumbled upon this on Instagram. I know my young poet self is kind of revealing itself here. So I saw this on Instagram. That was my inspiration. It was an excerpt from a letter that Virginia Woolf sent to Vita Sackville West in 1940. So it says, dearest, let me have a line. You have given me such happiness. So I decided that would be my opening to this poem. Yeah. Dearest, let me have a line. Dearest, let me have a line. For you, I'd rip my lucky dollar in half. Everything can be more beautiful when you share it with someone. Drunk fruit flies and pancake batter and forks in the sink, even magic 8-balled, Little Hollywood, the color streams from your fingers, plucked strings like wild berries and cupped palms, an offering, a Sagittarian soul, a prismed mind, charmed the snake to make it blind, and dropped an apple, said, let the ground claim it. Where the devil is in a rush, but we don't keep time close to our chests, only shaking exhales and knitted crowns of satin grass, each breathy strand of verse defined. I barter for nightgowns and attics so I can hold a candle to you. Driving past crooked sunflower corpses doesn't make me feel lonely the way it used to. Now sometimes I forget to turn the porch light off. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful hearing all those quotes, among other things, and then what you brought from them into the poems. I was wondering if some of those were prose poems, and we'll find out later. I'll ask you that, find out. Since you are both a prose writer and a poetry writer, how that works for you. But your first book was a chapbook of poems, so that's cool. Our next poet is our one and only male with us, Sam. Sam Mills is also an English major, going into his senior year. He's also a distance runner for the university, and he's been writing poetry since he was younger. Welcome.
Thank you. I only have one poem to read today. That's partially because I just like to stew on things for way too long and leaves my perceived output less. But this is called My Dad Did Not Buy Me a History Degree from Trinity College in Hartford, CT. Flannel bathrobe fathers cast their vice on two children and in the same breath call their sex a sin. Ivory men climbing higher, pretending their vanity will somehow present them morality. When faux science cells manipulate their wives, and his all waits uncharmed, naked, wishing for more lives. Once the prep school gimmick has worn off, the ivory tower king's bow ties cast it off, transform into bristle cowboys of the righteous mind, who'll never try to appease the blind. Free to spurn their daughters and nurse abuse, they've taken more porn than another's can produce. If only I could force they to look beyond his optics, to see its mind as pure robotics. Algorithms, mysticisms, criticize, mysticize, mist his eyes. Come now and take the throne, while the siren hums a half-hearted moan of patent leather emotion on command, ignored by your amnesia libido's demand, the first passing of the scepter's glory, O great philosopher king of statutory. In the salon has my rapier drawn, swing to slash his factory fresh brawn, but in my finger just a pen, which always cries for when, and my ink bleeds not your blood. We cannot cut you from the mud. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'd love to hear that again. Maybe we can let you read it again since you didn't fill your whole time. Is that okay with everybody? Yeah, would you? Sam?
Sure, yeah, I can.
If you're reading pretty fast, I'd like to hear it again.
Yeah, I can do that.
What's it called?
My dad did not buy me a history degree from Trinity College in Hartford, CT. Flannel bathrobe fathers cast their vice on two children and in the same breath call their sex a sin. Ivory men climbing higher, pretending their vanity will somehow present them morality, while faux science cells manipulate their wives, and his all waits uncharmed, naked, wishing for more lives. Once the prep school gimmick has worn off, the Ivory Town King's bow ties cast it off, transform into bristle cowboys of the righteous mind, who'll never try to appease the blind, free to spurn their children and nurse abuse, They take in more porn than another's can produce. If only I could force they to look beyond his optics, to see its mind is pure robotics. Algorithms, mysticisms, criticize, mysticize, mist his eyes. Come now and take the throne, while the sirens hum a half-hearted moan of patent leather emotion on command, ignored by your amnesia libido's demand, the first passing of the scepter's glory, O great philosopher king of statutory. In the salon has my rapier drawn, swing to slash his factory fresh brawn, but in my finger just a pen, which always cries for when, and my ink bleeds not, your blood, we cannot cut you from the mud.
There's such a love of language in that, which is why I asked you to read it again. It just get kind of swallowed up in the beautiful plays on words and things. Very nice.
Thank you.
Okay, Rachel. Rachel and I have been working together for about 1.5 years, and she was both in reading poems and actually she wasn't in an honors class, but she has been my honors advisee for I think 1.5 years, and we're going great guns. So Rachel started writing poetry as soon as she could spell. I love that spelling has to do with writing poetry. Years later, while in high school, she had the honor of seeing 3 of her poems published in Balancing Act 2, the anthology of poetry by Maine women. Now studying English at UMaine, she's working on a creative thesis that explores the liberating power of poetic constraint. I am her thesis advisor, she says to us. Rachel is also a member of the UMaine Creative Writing Club. Storied recently, one of her poems was accepted for publication in The Rectangle, the creative journal of the Sigma Tau Delta International English Honor Society. That is a long title. Okay, welcome, Rachel.
Hello. So I'll just be reading some of my most recent poems, and I'll start with a sonnet called Lilac Time, which is based on a silent movie from the 1920s by the same title. Lilac Time. Far behind the British lines, each dawn, a 7th plane takes flight. The hour done, this plane is lost. It won't come back, it's gone. The others land, they rest beneath the sun, and Tommies raise their glasses to the one who did not live to see the sunrise fade. High above, the sunlight mourns for none, and lilacs still perfume the air, arrayed in every shade of lilac, unallayed. That must be Captain Blythe. A British plane, aflame with sunset, crashes in the shade. Unhurt, the captain slowly sips champagne and promptly falls in love with Jeannie. So, will he come back? Only fear says no. So, that's the first one. And my second poem is in the form of a ghazal, which, in case anyone hasn't heard of that, it's a Middle Eastern verse form that is actually older than the sonnet. And the most important thing about it is it's made out of couplets. And the second line in each couplet has to end with the same word or phrase. And that word or phrase is preceded by a rhyme, which remains the same throughout the poem. And one thing that I find most interesting about this form is that the couplets don't have to be related to each other. Typically, they don't tell a story, but they are thematically related due to the refrain at the end of each couplet. So this ghazal starts with a line from Millay's Sonnet 90, which I actually changed a little bit, and it's longer than a typical guzzle, so I'll just read part of it. To a lilac. A guzzle after Millay's sonnet 90. 1. Gone, in good sooth you are, not even your scent still lingers. Where have you been taken, drawn, or sent? All the flowers and leaves are gone, the grass is dead. Is this the after, or is it before scent? The apple is gone, only the core is left. The scent of withered flowers, an apple core scent. At sunset, the beagles follow the scent. They pause, confused and anxious. River waters obscure scent. Bleak midwinter, all is silent, cold and white. All branches bare, come back, they implore scent. Candles, hand soap, perfume, shampoo. She's allergic to everything scented. Sadly, she has to abjure scent. The beagle follows a scent. The poet follows a rule. Every couplet must end with or scent. 2. COVID took her sense of taste and smell. No stink of paper mills now, no floral Dior scent. The door swings open, quick, outdoors at last, nose to the ground, the beagle starts to explore scent. Early June, the air is scentless now, so empty now. Soon peonies will bring more scent. Bees applauded the first flowers, but color wasn't enough. They requested an encore, scent. Flowers, April rain, cut grass. She dreams of spring, disdaining every indoor scent. The grass withers and the flowers fall, the grass withers. There's no such thing as a sure scent. How can I send my fragile thoughts to you? This poem will suffice. This metaphor, scent. 6. Today is June 15th. A sunny sadness in the air. Today's branches abhor scent. We feel for the woman who lost her last penny, rightly. But what about the coin? Poor scent. Where have all the blossoms gone? Withered, just like those pretty roses Alastor sent. The white stag knows it will escape, though beagles eagerly follow its herbivore scent. Why must we all grow up so fast? Already. Smelly sunscreen, that college tour scent. This wind brought a beautiful scent from the garden. Lily, jessamine, summer breezes adore scent. Love, I know without the slightest doubt you will reward. The envoy, a troubadour scent. 7. Why is she so sad, so still? Why mourn? Next summer will, in sooth, restore scent. You're gone, long gone, your converts long from dawn to dawn for spring, oh, longed for scent. Your ship is drifting farther and farther away. I never deciphered the message your semaphore sent. Lovely in sooth you were, those lilac blossoms. Now you have no charm nor scent. And that's the guzzle, or at least part of it. I tried to exhaust all the rhyming possibilities, and I didn't quite do it, but I tried. And this last one, I wrote quite recently in Professor Moxley's workshop this semester. It's called Ad Lirum, or which is Latin for to the lyre. And just to be clear, by lyre, I mean the musical instrument. And here it is. Ad lirum. You lied to me, liar. Fine, goodbye, Pax. The lake bed is littered with sunken kayaks. Don't deny facts. Like fallen porcelain, the sky cracks and stars do not align. Caressing wavelets lap against the silence, and loons cry out against the gloomy dark, the lonely night. You miss the moon? Try wax. Why do you pine for the softness of silax? You misunderstand the way a smile acts. Your mind makes lies. I'm no longer blind. A smile is a line, nothing lovelier than that. Why do you sigh for the bliss that a sky lacks? You're in pain. Don't worry. The pain will pass, and you'll be sorry for your loss. Alas. And that's it. That was my last poem. And actually, I forgot to mention, I should have made some notes to myself, but that poem used a technique from French poetry called rime fantôme, in which, so I chose a special word and I didn't use it in the poem, but I used words that rhyme with it and sound like it. So hopefully you were able to guess which word I was trying to conjure up. And that's it.
Thank you. And our final poet is Starla Straub. And she's from Florence, Alabama. They moved up to Maine to escape from the heat. Good idea. They're 19, have been writing since they were a little kid. I'm so glad that so many of you have that to say. It's always been an outlet for them when they really didn't know how to express what they were feeling. It's allowed them to say things out loud to people that they wouldn't ever get to say otherwise. Beautiful introduction. Do you want to tell us anything else? Where is she?
I'm right here.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah.
Do you want to add anything more to your bio or not?
No, I think that's all.
Are you an English major?
No, I'm an art major.
So there, okay. Thank you.
So my first reading is called Letters to the Universe, and it's a collection of journal entries and other writings that I've done, but it follows like one story. It's about the different catastrophes that we have going on today. Okay. Dear Universe, it's January 23rd, 2021. School has been on lockdown since yesterday because there's been a COVID-19 outbreak. We were really freaked out because it didn't and still doesn't feel like that's all it was. A second case was confirmed on my hall today. It was a really good day despite being alone all day. I cleaned my room and my fridge. I got dressed. I set up a temporary space for my books and my crystals, and I even did a card reading. I looked through Pinterest and listened to new songs for my playlist. I let the windows open and just tried to enjoy myself. I'm kind of excited to be going home. I'll have more freedom and privacy, but I'll be alone for my 18th birthday. The problem at home is that I don't stay motivated, but I'm hoping to work on that. I want to continue working out, but I'm tired pretty often. I'm getting much more comfortable being alone, but I'm trying not to just sit and watch TV. I want to be more productive. I need to get into a routine. I worked on that today. I'm getting better and I can finally feel the difference. I'm getting there. It's going to be okay. I love you. This week was near hell. It's February 11th, 2022. I had meetings every day this week. I even skipped a class because I was shaking from my dreams. My dreams were so vivid, I'm still not sure if I'm awake. I have an event to host today and a social tonight. I spent a few hours yesterday trying to find the right outfit. I got a good one though. My friend said that he'd start going to the gym with me if I want. I think things are starting to get better. The sun has been out a lot the past few days. It's really helped my mood. My interview went well. The lady seemed nice. We had a snow day last week. It was very healing. My friends and I went and played on a snow mound. We slid, climbed, and made snow angels in it. I've been on my phone less, and life is getting better bit by bit. I love you. Dear Universe, it's currently 4 a.m. on a Sunday in October of 2022. I still haven't been to bed yet. Not for lack of want or lack of trying, but I'm scared of the things that come with closed eyes. It's not like my nightmares can really be worse than the reality I live when I'm awake, but my most common nightmare is about zombies, and I hate zombies. There's something about watching someone you love disappear while still physically being there that messes me up. Did I tell you that all my friends are 18 now? We've been talking about going to Canada to go clubbing. We're young, we're supposed to be having the time of our lives, right? Well, now that they're 18, they're old enough to be drafted. With World War III being only a couple of decisions away, I'm worried my friends will become the zombies. I'm worried they'll leave, and if they come back, they'll never be the same. I've been trying to stay off my phone more. The blue light is bad for my eyes, and the news is bad for my mental health. I don't want to miss any work notifications, though, so I can't turn it off. Normally, when I need a change, I'll change my hair, but I can't do that now without thinking of the women protesting in Iran who have been protesting for the last 4 weeks. What have I been doing for the last 4 weeks? It feels like nothing. I should get to bed. Good night. I love you. Dear Universe, I'm not sure what time or day it is. We've been in an underground bunker for a while now. The explosions outside stopped a couple days ago, and the radio went silent. We still have plenty of water and rations, so no one plans on leaving yet. World War III didn't waste any time turning to nuclear bombs. We're hoping the bunker protects us from some of the radiation. Only a couple of people have been getting sick. Time isn't real down here, and there's not much to do. All internet went down weeks ago, but we still have power and a few movies to watch. I'm trying to keep myself busy, but I'm feeling like a zombie. Maybe a routine would help. We'll talk soon. I love you. Dear Universe, the bunker didn't take enough of the radiation. This will be our last talk. I feel like I'm on fire. I'm trying to distract myself by thinking of life before we let the little stuff get to us. Such trivial things were global problems. Now that the globe is ruined, did it ever matter? Was the fighting all for nothing? We're all zombies, and maybe we always were. It hurts to talk, so this is goodbye. I love you. See you soon. I have a couple other things to read as well. And these are just a few of my other poems that I've really enjoyed. I'm gonna read, this one is called Hymn. If I were to die today, you would be the person I loved most, and God, I really hate it. Because for you, I was the doormat or maybe the shoe rack near the door to your future, but to me, you were the door that would open just to slam back in my face, not one, not two, not even three, but 4 times before closing for good. To you, I was a glint or maybe a shimmer of light on your path, but to me, you were the light at the end of the tunnel that turned out to be a fire, destroying me from the inside out. You see, I learned to stand in your warmth only until I would start to burn before running away again. Far enough that I could only hear the whispers of the fire, but not far enough to breathe properly again. I let you suffocate me for so long, I forgot what fresh air felt like. And when you had enough of the oxygen I was providing, you vanished, leaving ruin everywhere you touched. I was left to pick up the pieces of my shattered self alone and in the dark. I thought it was the end of the world. But as the fresh air hit my lungs, I knew that one day I would be okay again. And now, if I live past today, I know that one day you will no longer be the person I love most. And God, I can't wait. And then I have just one more thing to read. This one is called ABCs. It's actually something that we did while we were in Storied. It was based off of one of the prompts at the club. So, a long time ago, before the fall of man, chilling tales were told for fun. Dares were dangerous just to test the limits of our existence. Evenings were spent holding back tears and on to lovers. For then, it seemed their normal would never change. Ghosts now wail to songs long forgotten, and heaven's gates have been closed for longer than any lifetime. I've believed that being a good person was enough. Just barely getting by on my own, knowing what I didn't then, I would have cherished so much more. love that wasn't quite right, moments that went too quickly, nights I spent alone on things that didn't matter, opening and closing the same apps over and over again. People once asked me what I loved most about life. And now I would say questioning existence with my friends after one too many late nights, riding around with no destination for hours on end, secrets from my sister's stories that I'll never tell a soul. The times I could see the stars almost too clearly, understanding that at the same time everything and nothing mattered. Very little things that I miss so dearly now when everything has turned to nothing. That was my last one. Thank you.
Whoa, your voice is so clear. It's sort of ringing in me. And the Dear Universe poem is gorgeous. Wow. And that refrain that keeps coming back, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. I love you. Really beautiful poem. Okay, so I think we're handing this back to Mccadden for a few minutes and then moving on to questions and discussion with all of you. Thank you, all of you again. Beautiful reading.
Well, thank you all. That was amazing. And really, at this point, I'll turn it over to John Paul and Kathleen to have a conversation for a little bit, but I welcome anybody to put questions in the chat and we'll try to get to some of your questions as well for our poets, either for any individual one or for any of them as a whole.
Great.
JP?
Kathleen, where would you like to start? You know me, I have more questions than good for anybody, but I could go big on our time and I could go very, very personal and general about poetry. Where'd you like to go?
Yeah, well, the voices were all so very different
Wonderful, right.
that it might be fun to ask them about their influences on them. We heard from a few people what some of their influences are, but whether or not they carry those voices of their influences with them, or and what it feels like to read the words aloud to other people. And is that the way that so I want to ask if that's the way that you put your poems together. Is it from a kind of hearing inside yourself, or do you kind of have a conversation with yourself as you're writing? You know, how do you go about that? So the influence of voice and also the influence of other voices on you, that seems like it might be a fun thing to talk about for a while. Maybe we'll start with Paige, because she told us that she had some definite influences. Where'd she go?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Sorry to pick on you, but
no worries. So yeah, obviously not all of the influences that I kind of cited are poets. So that kind of voice isn't necessarily what I try to adopt, but more the way that those writers have made me feel, I think, and the themes that they explore. I know Kathleen also kind of asked me about my work being like prose poetry. So I wanted to read something. I typed up the little summary for the back of my chapbook, and I said that World Peace and Cowboys is a collection of words that could be poems, but also could not be. So that's how I'd probably describe, you know, how I synthesize these influences and then, you know, get it on paper. And I think that also it's like fun to look at how they're typed. Like Blondie here, you can't see it, but like some of the parts are in parentheses, and I like playing with form a lot. So that's something that doesn't necessarily translate over this sort of reading, but yeah, I don't know if that really even answered your question, Kathleen, but
yeah, that's a great
stab at it.
into it. That's wonderful. there's Rachel, you want to talk about your voice? And form?
So the question, is it about my influences?
You what?
If you could clarify the question just a little, is it about what influences my poetry?
Well, I know that you're working on the importance of restraint.
Constraint.
And so how does your voice work with, how does your voice come through the form? Is the form holding the voice back? Is the form helping to bring the voice out? I mean, have you changed over the last year and a half in the way that you write with form?
Okay, yes, a very very complex question that I will attempt
question, yeah.
to answer. So the first part of it is how the form affects my voice, and I think the reason I started using form, like traditional forms, the sonnet, the ghazal, is because I believe that it instead of holding me back, it actually allows me to write in a way that's more expressive. So I think that it amplifies my voice and adds complexity that wouldn't be there otherwise. So form is very important in my poetry, as well as techniques, such as the rhyming technique that I used in the last poem. And then you asked if the way I write using form has changed. And I think it has. Since I started taking poetry classes in college, I have learned a lot more about different kinds of forms, different techniques. So like I didn't, my first sonnet I wrote in I think 2021, so like a year and a half ago, I guess. And before I started studying poetry in college, I did use form, but I was doing it very blindly, very intuitively, without any real training. And I think that my ability to use form has been really enhanced and amplified by the formal study that I've had the privilege of having with Professor Ellis here and with Professor Adams, who was also here, and Professor Moxley.
Well,
So.
and also your French language courses as well in poetry.
Yes, I am taking a French poetry class this semester.
Kathleen, if I could just interject from the chat that you might want to incorporate in your questions. There's a question from Diane that Rachel seemed to, be answering in many ways about how their poetry's changed or transformed since the poet's arrival at UMaine.
Okay. Sam, where are you?
Oh, sorry, the power keeps going out.
Okay. Did you hear what the question was?
Yeah, I did. It's just the lights.
Oh,
So it's the one in the chat about the university's influence, correct?
Yes, and in terms of form, theme, influences, etc., since you arrived at the university.
Yeah, so I don't think that in my poetry I have any particular commitments to structure, but what has changed a lot in my time here is just kind of the breadth of things I've read, and that has really been the biggest influence. Is I've taken in so much more poetry and literature, and that's been super significant in shaping kind of the way I approach writing.
okay. Where are we? Iris.
Well, I have to agree that I feel like the reading lists for classes, of course, like, you know, it's good to be exposed to new things. But I also just really appreciate professors, just because I feel like sometimes you know what you're trying to do, but you don't know how to get there. And having people who are more knowledgeable than you is so nice. Like, I've been working with Jennifer Moxley this semester and in her workshop, and I've gone to her after class, and I feel like she must be able to like read my mind, or else all poems ever written, because I'll just like say anything and she'll be like, well, have you tried this book? And it's like, well, that solved that problem, thank you. And I feel like I could just go and it would be so much more efficient than living my own life. I feel like I should maybe hand over the reins sometimes. But I don't know, she recommended Laureen Niedecker recently, and I feel like reading her poetry very instantly like helped me with the clarity of my own. And I was like, well, it's that simple sometimes when people really have read and really know what to recommend. So I've just appreciated all of the professors that I've gotten to work with.
That's so interesting, Iris, because it relates to another question, if I can jump in again from the chat from Monique, who says, how do you stay open to growth and critique from others without losing your own powerful center and the strength of purpose or your own voice? So, Kathleen, I don't know if you want to direct that, but I think Iris touched on that a little bit.
Yeah. Starla, do you want to answer that?
When I was very young, I've always enjoyed writing, but my classes made it where I started to hate writing. And then in 7th grade, I had a teacher who, we had a poetry unit, and he made it so enjoyable that he's actually the reason I came back to writing. And then the things that you really stay open about are like the forms and the techniques of writing, and it's less about your content. And so if you just stay strong with your content, then it's easy to stay open to things about like where to place a word or how to structure the poem.
Good. Anybody else want to respond to that? Paige, want to respond to that? Or?
Yeah, I definitely can. I agree with what Star said. Just how I know that in high school and even earlier on in middle school, I was a bit deterred from writing. It was very much my me and my diary, and no one else could come into my consciousness. But learning how to share my work and take things with grace has been a thing I've had to learn. And I'm really, really fortunate that at UMaine I have some really great mentors. I'm not sure if Holly's still here, but I'm always just open to any critiques, really, because I am pretty new at this. So I am, young new poet. So yeah.
Okay. I know that John Paul has some questions. Where did he go?
I'm here, Kathleen. Yeah.
Want to jump in?
Yeah, let's take a big one. We can take a stab at this or not. I wanted to speak a little bit to the time that we live in. If I just made a quick list: Anthropocene, 6th grade age of extinction, population explosion, climate change, desertification, pollution, computers, internet, robotics, cybernetics, AI, genetic engineering, incredible medical advances. I mean, we're deluged with this blistering scientific advances. These are extraordinary, extraordinary times. And in so many ways, we are shaped by the times that we live in. And simply by virtue of age, I've seen some things you haven't seen. You'll see some things I won't see. I'm wondering how you feel that our times have shaped your experience and how poetry and writing helps you shape your experience as you move through these times. What's your sense of all of this, and how does that filter into what you create, which is ultimately how we spend our lives, is how we live?
Can we go back to Starla, because your work seems to do that in a big way. The Dear Universe poem is really amazing. Do you think of that as a prose poem?
The first two pieces of that poem are actually straight from my diary. And then the others, I kind of do that at night, is I'll just say out loud how everything's going. I'll say, Dear Universe, and I'll just keep talking until I feel better and want to go to sleep. And for me, I use poetry to get everything out. I use writing to explain how I'm feeling in a way that I don't talk about regularly. And I write my poetry to be spoken word. So the way that I write it is different than a lot of people, because I have symbols that mean certain things for me, like with enunciation and like what needs to be said, like loud or quiet or offset. But for me, I use poetry as like a journal almost. I mean, it varies like with content, what I'm actually going to be talking to people about and what I'm not. But for me, it's like a conversation. And so with being born after 2001, we have been exposed to nothing but history book worthy events. And so we have been living through this time that, like, since the beginning, since before we were even born, has been doing nothing but change. And the events in the news can shape how we're feeling, and that what is going on in the world is very hard for me. Like, it's very, like, I can't even read the news anymore, because it's so depressing and it's terrifying at the same time. And so writing things like this lets me express that in a way that other people can relate to.
Yeah, one of the things that you do, and that's probably because you write sections of this not all at once, is jump from topic to topic. And so when you came in with the Iranian women, which, you know, is happening as we're talking here, it was kind of a jolt, because, oh my, this affects all of us, especially women, thinking about this. We related to Roe versus Wade, you know, all kinds of things that are related to it. And you say, where was it? Sorry. The thing about what have I been doing for the past few weeks in relation to what they've been doing. That's beautiful stand-up language, and I really applaud you on speaking out in that way, because your voice is very clear. It seems to be your voice is you, and you don't change it much as a poet. You're not putting it into some tight form, except you are, because you're going Dear Universe each time. And by Dear Universe and saying that it's going to be okay, I love you, as bookends, and then you put something in there that's just really grabs you. That's very successful. So I'm not sure how you came to that. You just started doing it, I imagine. But
Well, actually, I end all of my journal entries with I love you, to my future self. I actually have a tattoo of my handwriting saying I love you on my arm. And so when I first started the piece, I started with the third part of it. And as I was writing it, I was like, I could bring in other parts of my journal to make it where it's a timeline of events. I was writing in my journal when COVID started. So I was trying to find different pieces that alluded to COVID. And then the World War III thing is about Ukraine trying to enter NATO. And if that passes, it essentially starts World War III. And so that I just ended the others with "I love you" because that is how I end all of my journal entries.
Hmm.
So,
But of course, that
If-
relates back to Dear Universe and
Right.
loving everything that we know about and don't know about, right? Yeah, beautiful.
It's beautiful. I wanted to interject a bit of a question from the chat that Ellen wrote, because Star talked about writing for spoken word, and Paige talked about the visual aspects of poetry on the page. And Ellen's asking, how important is the look on the page or the visual aspect of the poem to each of you? And I don't know and I don't mean to continue putting Star on the spot, but you said you made certain marks. Are they only for you, or are they to be able to let other people know from the visual reading of your poem how it's meant to be read?
some of it, I feel like some of my poems can be read the way that I speak them, but I do use symbols in some of my like longer pieces that I don't know if anyone else would understand. Like I use a double slash when there's like a really long pause for something, or I will like I will write things in like different fonts almost, like in italics or in bold, or I'll have them underlined. And I feel like those are easier for people to understand. And some of my poetry is written to be both. And so I'll use like paragraph gaps to accentuate like where different things are, kind of like a prose writing, but it's poetry.
And what about the visual aspects for someone else?
In some of my pieces, I use parentheses to denote words that could be different just based on like a single letter and have like alternative meaning. So for example, in the second to last line of the second stanza of what I read today, the first passing of the scepter's glory, the L is capitalized and in parentheses because gory was an alternative reading, and it's not like one or the other. It's just not something that would be put off to the side, but remains in the piece because it could just at any point go either way.
Nice.
Anybody else? If we're changing subjects here, perhaps, can I keep you there, Sam? And
Yeah, for
your
sure.
Your long poem kept building up and building up and building up energy. And I'm assuming that that's what you wanted. And it was partly because of all the play on words, and it became very rap-like, musical. The sounds were so wonderful. That's one of the reasons I had you read it over, is that I got so caught up in the sounds, and the voice is very strong there. But is that what you intended? What did you intend by all of the plays on words? Just what you like to do, or?
Yeah, definitely. I think part of it is just flow, because I had an intention. Like it's a critical poem. But I think when you kind of have a theme, or for me at least, when you have something in mind as you're writing, it becomes less like poetry and more like writing an essay. Like I'm always coming back to the thesis and thinking, well, is this getting to the point or not? And I think that's really distracting, and it inhibits good poetry. So part of it is just getting away from the angst, anger, criticism, and letting the words kind of flow. And I think like when I look at it and read it again, different wordplay comes across to me that was not intentional. So I think part of it is just luck.
Okay. It'd be great if John Paul brought in another large question before we close? Did you
Yeah,
guys-
I'd be happy to just pull this right down to the personal level.
Okay.
I have this quote that I wrote down from Audre Lorde for this little thing. I thought it did a nice job. Poetry is not a luxury, it's a vital necessity of our existence. It forms the quality of light within which we predicate our hopes and dreams towards survival and change, first made into language, then into idea, then into more tangible action. So, poetry, hard to make a living with, hard to live without. Why do you write poetry? What does poetry do for you? Anybody jump in?
Well, I feel like it's about clarity because I also really love that essay from Audre Lorde. And like one of the things she gets at is the idea that we don't develop new emotions as time goes on, which I think goes back to your earlier question about like what it means to be like impacted by the moment. And I feel like the feeling that we have is about like the seeming, it seems like the world's ending. That's not like a new feeling. And if you like even look at, you know, Wordsworth like waking up early in the morning and seeing London before like, you know, everyone's out to work. You can see it throughout time, like all these people being like, oh, things are changing, how bad, so much less nature, so much less magic in the world, but we just keep saying it, but we still keep writing things down. And so I feel like as like the little changes, you know, I'm not going to be watching London for, you know, like the factory workers and people going to the cobbler or whatever you do in the early 1800s, but you know, like adapting that sort of feeling and exploring it and reimagining it for like the present day, because I think that's sort of what Lord gets at there is like the way that clarity of emotion and giving voice to emotion is one of the ways for creating change. Like you can't act on things unless you can understand that you feel them and how you feel them and why you feel them. So I think at least like for me, that's like one of the big things is just trying to unpack the subjective experience, I guess. But
Yeah.
Paige or Rachel, either one of you want to say something? It looks like you do.
I was just nodding and smiling with what Iris said because I thought it was wonderfully expressed. I don't know if Rachel has anything. Don't want to cut her off.
Yes, I also agree with what Iris said, and I don't think I could say it better. Yeah, I think that, but I won't try to say it better, but I'll try to say it differently. I think that poetry is definitely about trying to understand things both in the world and in yourself, and in the space between the world and self. Definitely about finding clarity, which can lead to action, whether or not I know there's a debate on, well, whether poetry is about action or whether, like Auden said, it's poetry. I'm gonna slaughter the quote, but it's something like poetry accomplishes nothing, or can someone help me out?
Pretty close.
Doesn't make anything happen.
Poetry
Right.
doesn't make anything happen. So there is a debate on whether poetry is for the purpose of changing things or whether it's just there. But I agree that it's about looking for clarity.
Yeah, and Rachel, you had spoken a lot about encountering new forms. And I think one of the wonderful things about poetry is we are able to choose from all of the different forms and even invent new forms. That form kind of shapes our experience. So we have a lot of creative agency in shaping our experience, and even beyond clarity, it's about making space for us to be certain ways, to have these certain kinds of experiences that would be entirely different if we were writing an essay. where we're so concerned about the thesis, the sub points, the conclusion. It's a whole different way of being. So I'm wondering if you're finding new ways of expression through all those different forms as well.
Well, yes, I do think that since I started writing in form, I've been able to say things that I wouldn't have been able to say otherwise. Yeah. And I also agree that an important part of using form is change. You can't write in a form without changing what that form is. So because a form is just the sum of all the poems that contributed to that form. So I agree that it's definitely about creating new forms and changing existing forms.
And we've heard about Instagram and zombies and rap. And I don't think we would have had this conversation in this way 100 years ago, much less have the experience we're having right now. We've got people from Houston and all across the country listening in to what you've shared today. It's pretty neat.
It is really wonderful. And I want to thank John Paul and Kathleen for bringing us this and facilitating this fascinating conversation. And each of our poets today, I am just so impressed by these voices, by the subjects of your poem, by your skill at expression of your ideas and emotions and thoughts, and that range and diversity of what you brought to us today in your poetry. It's incredibly impressive. So I hope you all keep writing, and I know that if you do, I'm going to be hearing a lot more from all of you.
Yeah, terrific.
Yeah, thank you all. And thank you to our audience for coming. And I hope that each of our poets today will submit to the ekphrastic pairings if you have any interest in writing ekphrastic poetry in response to a work of art, and that you'll join us again. And this is recorded. It will be online on our websites, thepoetscorner.org. And, tell anyone who missed it just how wonderful this was, because it truly was. And thank you all.
Thank you so much, readers. Terrific. Thank you, Meg. Kathleen.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, especially the 5 from the University of Maine.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for hosting.